Hello and welcome everybody to this quick and we're gonna save all of you watching a lot of time. We're not gonna do what most of the people doing this have done, where we make you sit through an entire podcast and then give you the picture of the card and then you can go on your way. Instead, we'd like to leave you the opportunity, if you don't want to listen to us chat about it or don't want to listen to the rest of what we're going to chat about, because after this we plan to have a little discussion about the reprints that are coming in the set and mostly about how they're going to affect V5. So if you're not really interested in V5, I'll give you the option to leave a little bit early. I know there's some percentage of people that are going to do it anyway. So
I'll happy for everybody who sticks around, and I think it's going to be a great discussion.
I think so too. I feel like this is a really good set overall for V5, and I feel like this is really the set to kind of cement that different clans will have, that the Camarilla clans really have more of an impact instead of this feeling much more like an Anarchs game. And I think our preview card will really help sort of cement that idea. But enough about this before the chat goes on. Let's kind of get right into it. All right, so this is, as we said, our 30th anniversary preview and reprint discussion, and we're gonna go right on into it with our preview card. Wait, that's all gray. Why is that all gray? Well, this is how it starts. What is the preview card? Does it exist? Do we actually have it? Maybe BCP and us are just lying to you about this. No, we promise it's here.
No, we will. But before we do, there are just a few cards which we want to show you, which relate to the card we're gonna reveal.
Yeah, I refer to this as sort of the parents of this card, the cards that give birth to what this card truly is. And those cards are Closed Session and Creepshow Casino. Now, of course, go ahead.
No, we had a little discussion. I would also add Palace of Versailles.
This card is not Palace of Versailles at all. I want to argue that specifically after we reveal the card so that I can prove how wrong you are.
But yeah,
but this,
keep that in mind.
This card is much, much more the child of Closed Session and Creepshow Casino, giving a little taste of each thing blended into what this card does. So without further ado, let's peel away the gray film. And here is Camarilla Conclave. A unique master that requires a Just Guard Inner Circle member. It starts with 4 counters on it, and during a political action performed by a Camarilla vampire you control, or its polling step, you can burn 1 counter from this card to give the acting vampire either +1 stealth, there's that Creepshow Casino part, or to give each non-Camarilla vampire -1 vote. There's that mini Closed Session there. And then if this card has no counters, burn it.
And before I'm going to talk about why I think Elysium fits, I want to mention how good I think of a card that is. I mean, it's not a great card, but it is a card which supplements the voting strategy and some of the weaknesses Toriador and other political decks have had since V5.
Sure, but as I said when we were chatting a little bit about this over Discord, this card doesn't do quite the same thing that Elysium does. This card turns down the number of votes, not increases the number of votes, and that can matter a lot. This actually negates what the rest of the field is doing, not increases what you're doing. There are many different cases where an Elysium is a huge swing for you, but not necessarily enough to give you what you need to bypass. Whereas a card like this will reduce the number of votes to make sure that you have an opportunity to be able to pass something if more of the people at the table are playing Anarchs. It's an immediate punishment to all of the Anarch hordes of decks. If you happen to be playing at all Camarilla table, sure, this card doesn't do a whole hell of a lot. But for the most part, it's much more like Closed Session than Elysium here.
Well, both the cards come into this from the same angle. Like, playing them both, you will get a significant boost against Anarch Barons or Anarch Vote decks if you have Conclave and Elysium. Because what I like about Conclave specifically is that it is quite flexible. So because you can use it for -1 vote or to add up 1 stealth, which is this shouldn't be a dead card.
No.
In the deck.
You
Got
should
some stuff for political actions though.
Yeah. You should never be unhappy to run multiple copies of this card. You should never like have 2 of these masters in hand and be like, I'm never going to cycle through this. This should be a card you can play out, know within 2 turns you're probably going to have emptied out, and then drop another one, because you're either going to get that stealth or you're going to be able to use it to, even if it's fruitless, right? Let's say you are playing it at all Camarilla table and nobody's really blocking. You can still burn through this card pretty quickly because you don't. And in the case of the non-Cam vampires getting -1 vote, you're not negating anything. You're not losing anything by doing that. You're just helping yourself cycle through an additional card as you go through it. Let's talk about what the downside here, though, is. There is a pretty big downside, and that is having to play a Justicar and Inner Circle member. I think for many people playing non-V5, that is a bit of a downside, or a little bit of not a little less of a downside. Justicars or Inner Circle members are a lot easier to come by in non-V5, so it's a lot less of a pain point for players.
But I do think it fits quite thematically, because you have to control a Justicar Inner Circle member when you play the Master card, but every Camarilla vampire can use it. So, by the way, this is, I think, the second card from the new set which uses the Camarilla sect as its own effect, like the other one being Lucinda, as far as I know.
I'm really hoping we get to see even more stuff like that. I do want to see like the true might of the Camarilla kind of get to finally push its way through. And this card is another stunning example of BCP trying to make sure that having a Camarilla, being part of the Camarilla sect isn't just kind of like a penalty, and is instead maybe even a benefit in many ways, which is kind of how it should be. Being a part of the Ivory Tower should come with some benefits, even if less of them go to the weaker people. Also, based on a conversation from earlier, I just want to say that this apparently makes Sybren Van Oosten the most powerful vampire ever printed for not only V5, but for just VTES, because now he can get 2 additional stealth on every action. It's just so much, every political action. It's just so much stealth, and he'll never end up losing the votes. By the way, I love you, Smee, very much, but I had to throw that in there.
And another thing I think is it will absolutely not only help Toreador, but maybe, just a little maybe, help other law firm, like specifically Venture too.
Yeah, I think Venture are going to be in a weird place, but I don't want to talk too much about that right now because I want to focus on all the new cards for a different episode of our podcast. But for now, I think that's some pretty useful stuff said about Camarilla Conclave. I think it's going to be a really, really good card to see hit tables in VTES, and I'm really, really looking forward to it. So those of you that are interested, please stick around with us. We'll continue a discussion about all the cards being reprinted in the set and how we feel like they're going to affect V5 mostly. And I think it's going to be a really good discussion. I think this really does sort of cement V5 as a solid format. And from the position I've been in teaching it to players, it really is the best format for teaching new players that want to come into the game. Right now, that may change over time. There's always that argument that like V5 blah 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 will basically be the same thing as Elder is already. But that's in time. This still marks a great place to start teaching new players how to play. And there are things that can happen that may make this an entirely different kind of feel and game altogether. BCP has talked about before the goal of making this a bit more of a slightly faster, but not fast-paced game, the kind of game where you expect a 2-hour game instead of games to go to time because nobody's actually finishing anything. So let's move on from Camarilla Conclave to the first of our new reprints. So new to V5 cards. And that's going to bring us to Alistor.
Yeah, and I think, by the way, there are a lot of great reprints in the deck and in the additional cards which come with it. And like most of them are really politically based. What a surprise!
Yes,
given the deck. But I think it really fleshes out V5 even further. Like there have been quite a lot and good new cards being introduced, but this is certainly another push.
Yeah. And Alistor is a great card, especially to add to the format. This, I feel like the Tremere already have a pretty good strategy and are really close. And if their Justicar is any good, Alistor, I think, will actually really help push them over the edge. This will let them get something really large they may not want to Magic the Smith out, and then have an attached rush when they need it. This is obviously going to be incredibly good for the I'm forgetting the Asimite, the Banu Hakim. This is going to be an obviously great card for the Banu Hakim. They've really, they can already do, again, sort of what the Tremere can, but this is really going to give them a nice way to immediately rush the people they want to and deal with solid problems and have a nice way to finish somebody after draining the blood off of them. Any thoughts, Jan?
Hold on. I'm sorry. Yeah, I think since there aren't as many equipment cards in V5 as of now, I haven't really thought about the card up until now, but it certainly enables, especially Banu Hakim, quite more flexibility to do something with their red cards instead of just pushing them out for retribution.
Yeah. Following that, we have a card that really goes along with this whole Alistor getting weapon, taking somebody down. It's Anathema. I don't know if I ever pronounced this right, but I've really tried hard to make this card exceptional and failed miserably at it multiple times. I feel like I've watched in non-V5 this card go to some use for the Banu Hakim and being able to be successful at using it, but it's really inconsistent. This card requires you to get to a very specific point while also letting the player know that your goal is to try to get that vampire to that very specific point. And that can be very hard to achieve in a lot of cases.
Yeah, I'm just wondering about, okay, Banu Hakim, sure, but which other clan might be able to benefit from this in V5 as of now?
Yeah, I'm not sure. They're requiring a Prince or Justicar. Like the Toreador aren't doing this. The new ventures seem to have a lot of potence and rushes, so maybe they're gonna do some of this. But I don't feel like this is really what they're gonna go for either. I feel like this is a card maybe just printed for the Banu, and that's it. But
I think the potence on the venture might be a thing because there are quite a few of them.
Yeah.
And I think Lucinda has it too.
Yeah.
And she has a rush ability, I think.
Yeah.
So
That's what I was talking about. When I said I want to talk about the Ventrue when we talk about the new cards, I think that's going to be the big conversation to have is, are the Ventrue suddenly the Diet Bruja? Going from Anathema, though, we have the start of the cards that many people know this game for pretty significantly. The cards that make having big vampires not a drawback in a big way. In fact, a benefit overall. And that is Ancient Influence to start us off. Really the original, I play a big vampire, and then I immediately get the pool back for it after I've slurped a bunch off of them with my minion tap. You follow it up with a nice Ancient Influence, gain yourself 10 pool off of your vampire sitting in play. Just a fantastic decision to put this into V5.
I'm surprised by the amount of the big cap benefactor cards they put in. Like, I think we're going to talk about the other ones in just a bit, but in general there haven't been as much cards which benefit from
having
these cards.
Yeah,
but Mithras, Queen Anne, Valerius, I think, Casim, and now the new Justicals and the Toriado Crypt. I think, but it might be a hint that we might get some high caps once in a while.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see whether or not this really gives Mithras the ability to push a Ventrue deck over the line. But that has yet to be seen. But what won't hurt Mithras get pushed over the line is Political Stranglehold. That's only going to add to the strategy.
Yeah, this is another one of these, as I said, a high cap benefactors. But I haven't played it really much, and I haven't seen it much in play. So what do you think about this, Steve?
Oh, so I've always felt like this is one of those cards that really is a lot better than sometimes it's given credit for. For also, just real quick, if I may, this wording change of can be played, only one can be played or called in a game. Great wording choice. Just wanted to throw that out there real quick before I continued. This card has like that advantage of if you happen to be playing 7 caps with disciplines, you might end up with a little benefit from that periodically. If you happen to be playing like, for example, inner circle decks that are all about like feed up the inner circle, you drop one of these down late game, it's pretty good. The Anson and Anike cards or decks are usually taking advantage of these pretty well. There's a lot of like ways that you can make this card really beneficial without putting a lot of work into it. And the average of like 7.5 pool I feel like you get from this card seems to be well worth it overall. That's basically what you can only hope to get from an Ancient Influence. I'm sure it takes a little investment up front, but with cards like Villain, this card is really no effort.
And interestingly, especially in V5, this might be even stronger because not as many people are playing high caps right now.
Yep.
And I think so the probability somebody else on the table is going to benefit from it aside from you is narrowed down quite a bit.
Yeah, I would agree. There's a lot of decks that are very streamlined towards being mid to low cap decks. And this card is going to be sort of like punishing for them. I know especially like the Toreador, if they get a good enough spread of even slightly higher than average cap vampires, they're going to want to put discipline cards on some of their key vampires. And this is going to be a card that could easily generate them 9 to 12 pool on average. But we'll have to kind of see what happens as we round the corner. But an easier card to take big advantage of your big caps is actually Reigns of Power. And this card can be devastating sometimes in the right deck. For those of you who don't know, this is like an inverted Ancient Influence. Instead of gaining the pool, you're going to deal roughly that much damage to your prey. It is a rough card to deal with when you have somebody who happens to have out an Inner Circle member, or worse yet, happens to be throwing disciplines on their Inner Circle member. And sure, only one of these can be played, but boy, does it hurt when you take something like 7 or 8 damage from this one Reigns of Power, and your prey is gaining themselves extra pool because you're playing a low cap deck.
And again, I think the probability for this to make high damage from your side and not taking as much is quite high with all of these lock-up barons. And I think the deck will not change the meta in just because there are a lot of cheap titles. But it does help to push the edge like a little in favor.
Yeah, I think it will help the meta, though. I feel like between Toreador and Ventru, having that ability to potentially gain a little pool as well off of a Predator who's only running small cap vampires is really going to give you a bit of the like push you need to live a few extra turns. I've seen in V5 games that we played at the store and online, a lot of games get determined by 2 or 3 pool ultimately. And a lot of that has been just not being able to get access to it you've invested in a larger cap strategy. And this card, I think, is going to give you that little bit of boost that you need. And we'll see this card turn the table for a couple of decks. But there are other cards besides just things that benefit your high cap vampires. In fact, there are cards that are political that benefit all vampires, like Reinforcements. This just requires a titled vampire.
I think I have thought a bit about this card, and what I do like that it introduces recursion into V5. It has like, I don't like Azure tablets as much, but I think an ability to do something with a pile of cards stacking up is nice, and I think maybe some balance effects should be in the game.
Yeah, I was really kind of hoping that I shouldn't say kind of hoping, I don't know for certain, but I am hoping that maybe this card gets a little bit of a buff. I feel like maybe just one more card would be nice on this, or maybe getting rid of the removal text for the card. I feel like it's not going to be often that you're going to try to overcycle, but I can understand that this could end up in some kind of weird voting cycle thing. But I really do want to see this card maybe get a little bit of a push. But it is very useful to be able to use it as a bargaining tool. Say somebody cross table, you're like, hey, you need a couple more of those cards back. I can give them to you back in exchange for your votes. I think this is going to have some interesting impact on the game. I just don't know if this is going to see more than 1 or 2 of as it stands now.
Yeah, but I think it is also a nice card, which I had recently a discussion about political decks in V5 as of now, which are lacking the vote power by themselves and relying more on negotiation than before. And I think this is a nice card which might help you with negotiations, because you can do this completely in favor for your cross-table ally. And or just perhaps even your prey or predator, if they just let you do X or Y.
Yeah, I think you'll find that it's not going to be as good a tool for that, but I think it's still a good tool overall. Moving on from Reinforcements, though, we get into our masters and start with Protected Resources. V5 needed this fucking card. Sorry if any of you are really ultra sensitive to swearing, but that's how impactful I think this card is on V5. There are too many out of control bleeders out there, and it's so nice that your political deck can finally throw this down and be like, okay, kill me now. Oh wait, you can't.
I think especially Nosferatu needed this most, because they are struggling with defense of their creeping sabotage, with multi actions, requiring to have a lot of wakes, and I think it. Sorry, it might
Jan
be
is
possible.
trying not to die, we promise.
Yeah, this is. It might just help to shift your card, the proper proportions from your in your deck.
Yeah, it gets, you can drop a little bit of your defensive measures that you need to have to play a lot of to survive, and sort of rely on this card to cover a lot of those bases, which makes this card very, very pivotal. I have played this card for years in Ventru, in like big law firm decks, and this card always gives you that little extra. And then when you're done with it, just throw it away and kill the person with your bleed. But that's not all. Oh, go ahead.
I also think that given there were some somewhat righteous complaints about how very much bleed there is in V5 and how easy it is to bounce, how many clans are having access to bounce, I think this is a really unneeded card, not from Nosferatu, but generally to not have only Archon Investigation a card, which I don't like at all.
We had a big discussion about that one.
Yeah. Just like doing something about bleeds, and this is certainly part of it.
Yeah. Going beyond protected resources, though, we also get the Louvre. I'm not French. I'm sorry. Louvre.
Someone. Okay. Yeah. I'm not talking French, but Louvre. I think French people might.
I mean, I'm an American, so I get a pass on anything that involves pronunciation, right? That's how that works.
Yeah, man. But anyway,
this card is. I don't know how I feel about this card. It's always been such a weird card. I remember way back in the day being like 19 years old and playing against a big Toreador deck that played this card along with Francois Villon. And I remember this card actually having an impact, but largely because no one was willing to try to steal it. They just kind of let this guy sit there with this card in play. And I was like, but you could just take it. I was across the table, and no one wanted me to go do it. So I wasn't going to do it for free. But it was weird that the Predator didn't realize, like, hey, that card's a big part of the strategy. Let me just snipe that out of there.
And honestly, even though it's not part of the card, but just somewhat, I'm curious who the Prince of Paris will be.
Yeah.
And what his ability.
I also want to remind people, by the way, there's some discussion about how pointless the new Toreador, the new 9-cap Toreador was, because there wasn't an easy way to lock it. What are you talking about? Here's your card. Drain that vampire of all of its blood, and then use this card. Also, keep in mind, it's not even lock a ready Toreador. It's any Toreador. But
just on the new 9-cap, like Annabelle, I think she is honestly a great card.
Yeah.
I mean, we haven't her in the presentation, but she really is what Toreador needed, I think, crypt-wise, because she has fortitude and she gives Camera Conclave also some stealth.
Yep.
Which is what they are lacking.
Very critical for them. Beyond, though, Paris, we head to Zila's Valley. Thank you for bringing this in if you're going to give us big cat vampires. It is so hard to, for example, one of the Bruges decks that I try to play runs the 9 cap and the 8 cap that were printed. I'm not remembering their names off the top of my head, which is annoying the hell out of me. Saku and I don't remember the woman's name. But it's so hard to be playing around needing these vampires and having to hope that you happen to get the info highway or hope that you get dreams while nobody else has dreams. This card is a blessing to have.
Yeah. And not too costly.
No.
Also.
Not at all. Priced just about right. Priced even enough that I've seen people use it, play it to cycle it, because you lose one pool to cycle a card from your hand. In the right circumstance, that's an okay cost to pay. Not a great price, but an okay cost.
Yeah.
But I really do think it's going to make a big impact on V5. I'm really looking forward to seeing what it does. Going on from there, though, we're into action modifiers. And this is where I got to ask somebody, anybody, Ben, the rest of the development team, why this card? This is a whole slot. This card, has this card ever seen play in anything? I'm sorry, I didn't look up the TWD before I jumped on here to rant about this card. But for all the love of the Methuselahs that have ever existed, why decide this card in reprinting?
Well, I haven't played it yet, but I don't find it too bad because vote Malkavians, like, I don't care how you burn pool, but if you vote against me, you can burn pool anyway. So I don't find it too bad.
It's implicitly a card that gives you no immediate benefit.
Yes, it does. They need to burn pool.
That's a whole separate thing. And when you burn pool, everybody else gets to decide if they want to burn pool.
Yeah.
This card has a secret cost. But to me, when you play a card, you should immediately get some kind of benefit for playing that card.
Well, I think if I try to vote push Camarada's Iron Fist, with that one, I don't see any problems with, like, either you take the damage from Camarada Iron Fist because I vote pushed, or you try to vote against me, burning even more pool.
I don't know. As it stands right now, I remain on the opposite side of this fence. I don't think this card is good enough. We'll see. Maybe I'm wrong. I hope that I'm wrong.
Well, I think it might be at least worth a try.
But releasing the pressure a little bit, there is a key card I am so happy to see reprinted. The Progeny are back. I wanted so badly to build something with Toreador making babies, and this is the best card to do baby making Toreador with, especially in V5. This is going to give them a whole nother archetype to play.
I think it also is key in putting Camarilla on par with Anarchs because they got what's it called?
The revolution, something about revolution, child of the revolution. There you go.
Yeah, thank you. So now it's equaled out. They can do something about it, and I'm very curious about the when there are more discipline cards because all of these enable you to do something with it, and there are just not as much discipline cards in V5 as of now.
Yeah. But babies aren't the only thing we've got here to talk about. We've also got some combat cards like Charismatic Aura. I'm both happy and sad this card is in V5 now.
Why sad? I need it for my Malkavians.
I feel like as it stands right now, there aren't a lot of like good enough benefits for grappling, and this just makes grappling feel even worse because it's like, oh, now you also have a counter for my grapple. I think it is essential, especially for the Toreador and as well your Malkavian. But I just feel like right now grapple's in kind of a sad place for V5, and charismatic aura really does just hurt it even more.
Yeah, but I don't like Immortal Grapple as much. Sure, combat decks do need it, and it is a card which has its place. But I think there needs to be some counter to it.
Yeah. I mean, that's it's fair to feel that way, and I don't think that's wrong. I just feel like where V5 is right now, this card feels like a little much. But lastly, we're gonna end on Pulled Fangs, I believe, right? Those are the last of the combat cards and the last of the cards that are newly printed for V5. This card needs to be buffed. It doesn't need to be buffed to what it used to be. It doesn't need to deal a point of aggravated damage and send the opposing vampire to torpor. That was obviously too good at that point. But this has such a hyper-specific circumstance that is required, plus a limitation in the only one, that you never really want to run more copies of this card because it's just painful to do. And the damage isn't even non-preventable damage. I do not understand how, as this card is right now, it's gonna be a card that feels like anything other than thanks for reprinting this ?
I don't feel as strongly against, because what I do like about this card is that it needs 2+1 stealth action, like 2 actions. Because this is like somebody can help you to deal with it, or not, and then in that moment when you have, for example, it might help Nosferatu too, because just it's easy to get a vampire empty, forcing him to hunt, but it's not as easy to inflict aggravated damage if you don't have Protean.
Yeah.
So
I understand that position. I still don't like that position. One, I think that the 2+1 stealth actions concept on a card was terrible. Still is terrible. The fact that even with this reprinting as late as it was, that never got fixed to be more understandable is just absolute nonsense. And also, again, even if you are running a clan that might want 1 extra point of damage, what happens when the 1 extra point of damage you need is on a vampire who already has one of these? That's just a dead card in your hand. What if you can't get the extra damage on the minion you need to? So many limitations, so many requirements. Just not a card that's really quite worth it in its present form. Just a little buff, a little tweak could really fix this card.
I think the close range would be key. Lifting close range.
Mechanically, I think that's a little too imbalanced. If you lift close range, then all I have to do is maneuver and poke you. And that's a little too good. Also, it kills the flavor. The flavor really doesn't make any sense, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Does my bat pull the fangs out of your vampire somehow?
Yeah.
I don't think close ranges would fix it. I almost think that pull fangs could maybe have a stacking damage effect when they already have a pulled fangs on them. So it maybe does an additional point of damage if they already have a pulled fangs, but you don't attach the card. I don't know. I would just like to see the card have a reason to want to play more than a handful of them to just occasionally trip somebody up. and even then, it could just get stuck. I mean, as somebody who's played a myriad of like amaranths before, I forget the name of the card that gives you pool back when you diablerize somebody. That's
I
multiple
don't know.
times decapitated. Huh? Yeah, I know.
I don't know. It's 25.
Decapitates, like all of these cards just have too much going on, and too many requirements going on in order to be functional. I also do think I'm going to quote somebody in the chat real quick, but this card is a new player nightmare.
Yeah.
It's like all the phases. You have to check it on the right phase. You have to check it on, oh, it's damaged, so I can prevent now in the middle of a phase that normally doesn't have a prevention window. We get to explain that. We have to explain 2+1 stealth actions. We have to remind them that it's only one pulled fangs. It's just very, very much too much.
This is very true. And I think one thing might be helping, like it is a wall of text. Losing a bit of it would be great.
Yeah.
And losing a bit of the specific requirements would also be very helpful.
Yeah. Very much so, potentially. But yeah, those are the reprints that are coming to V5. Once we get the rest of things spoiled, Jan and I are planning to do a review on all of the new cards that are coming in the 30th anniversary set. We didn't want to waste time talking about a handful of cards that have been spoiled so far. It seems like, not a whole lot of conversation to be made from that. So we'll go over those cards in the very near future, since obviously set comes out in about a month, and we should have plenty of time to discuss what they're going to do for both the regular game and V5.
But could you just move back for a second to the reveal, because apparently we do have some people who just came in during the discussion and didn't get the chance to see. So
sure,
for those who joined later,
there is our preview card, Camarilla Conclave. Very, very good card. We're both very excited to see this affect the game. Yeah.
And what I want to just pick up from the chat is it's nice to know that business pressure is Genius tech against Arishat. And apparently it does help quite a bit. So I'm at least in his playstyle. So I'm very curious about what kind of play this will see, because what I remember too is there's Scorn of Adonis and this new vampire who makes everybody pay a pool, so you can stack up as Toreador. The cost voting against the business pressure card quite high.
That's true.
So I'm very curious.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's kind of all we have for you today. I'd like to thank you guys so much that have stuck around. It's always appreciated. If you're watching this on YouTube also, thank you for making it to this point. You're the real members of the team. So yeah, thanks so much, guys, and we hope to see you again next time when we chat about the brand new cards for 30.
Yeah.
Take care.
Thank you, and take care.